If it's not the Prime Minister or the globalist cabal trying to beat you into submission, then it's Hollywood. Or should I say, Hollywood wannabes. The Canadian Junos took place this week, and it was every bit as cringy as you can imagine. The show is so embarrassing that Canadians with actual musical success and talent can't even bother to show up, leaving one-hit wonders and Calgary natives Tegan and Sarah to take to the stage to lecture us all about the importance of allowing children to mutilate themselves. Now, if you're struggling to remember who they are, you're not alone. The last time anyone cared about Tegan and Sarah's music, the only news delivery I partook in was my paper route. It's obvious that they've turned to politics to find the success and recognition that they once craved from a musical career. But Alberta politics already has enough bad actors, and we don't need washed up sloppy seconds from the Canadian Junos. I'm Rachel Emmanuel, and this is the Alberta Roundup. Taking a look at our first story here, at the recent Juno Awards in Halifax, Calgary musical duo Tegan and Sarah took aim at the Alberta government's decision to ban transgender surgery for minors. The sisters said the Alberta government policy amounts to a, quote, attack on LGBTQ rights while accepting the humanitarian award for their foundation's work. Take a listen for yourself.
If the world were not so hostile to us LGBTQ plus people, we would see ourselves purely as musicians. Advocating for our community's rights is a great privilege, and we are dedicated to confronting any form of discrimination that threatens the well-being of our community. Threats like the Alberta government's attempt to prevent trans youth from accessing vital care. These attacks are harmful because they are directed at the kids who need our support the most.
The award was, of course, presented by transgender actor Elliot Page, formerly known as Ellen Page. Page is also a member of the Tegan and Sarah Foundation board, and the foundation was formed in 2016 after President Donald J. Trump was elected to advocate for, quote, economic justice, health, and representation for LGBTQ girls and women. In a statement to True North, Danielle Smith's press secretary responded to the attack, saying, quote, the government is introducing these policies across several ministries to preserve the choices children and youth have before potentially making life-altering and often irreversible adult decisions. The government is also bringing in healthcare professionals who specialize in transgender care to work with transgender adults. You might remember that when Danielle Smith made this announcement a few weeks back, she said that currently transgender adults have to travel out of province to receive care. Moving into our next story here, Tucker Carlson is an Oling adept at drawing large crowds. He's also good for business, at least according to one Alberta credit union. Membership at Bow Valley Credit Union has expanded by 3% since it was the headline sponsor for Tucker Carlson's Canadian tour earlier this year. Bow Valley CEO Brett Olin told me that the growth comes despite legacy media outlets reporting that the partnership negatively impacted the credit union. Olin said, quote, since the mainstream media started with their vitriol towards Bow Valley, new membership continues to speed up as we hold firm with our position. The growth totals 356 new business and personal accounts and equals more than $26 million in new deposits. In contrast, Bow Valley lost 17 accounts and just over $400,000 in deposits, so you can see they clearly came ahead with this one. And let's take a look at some of that legacy media criticism of Bow Valley. In February, the Cochrane Eagle criticized Bow Valley for sponsoring the Carlson events and reported that the Airdrie Cochrane NDP would be moving funds from the credit union in protest. Just out of curiosity, how much money do you think that NDP branch even had in their bank account? My guess is they probably had like an empty line of credit, but no actual funds. As well, the Rocky Mountain Outlook's local journalism initiative reporter, meaning a journalist whose salary is paid for by the federal government, accused Bow Valley of, quote, coming under fire for a so-called marketing strategy to expand its membership and working in socially conservative circles. Moving into our next story here, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith testified at the House of Commons Estimates and Operations Committee on Thursday. The Premier has been imploring the federal government to not raise its carbon tax, which is of course scheduled to increase on April 1st. And she's been making that call along with 6 other premiers. Here's a look at what the Premier had to tell MPs this week.
Families are being forced to make tough choices just to put food on the table. Businesses are having to make sacrifices to keep the lights on. Social services are under intense strain as more and more people reach out for help, many for the first time in their lives. Albertans and all Canadians need common sense, compassion, and responsible government to prevail. That's why I'm urging you today to heed the calls of Canadians across the country and suspend the increase in the carbon tax on April 1st.
Moving into the controversy of the week, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she wants more control over immigration after the federal government declined to increase the number of skilled workers allotted to the province. In a letter, Smith asked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to reevaluate his government's decision to limit allocations for Alberta's provincial nominee program, saying Alberta's population growth is the highest seen in 4 decades and the province requires more workers. The Premier also said that Ottawa should respect Section 95 of the Constitution Act and let Alberta determine the number of skilled workers let into the province. In a statement, Smith said, quote, "We continue to experience labor shortages that could be resolved by welcoming skilled workers from around the world, including evacuees from Ukraine, many of whom have the exact skills that our job market most needs. Let us welcome the skilled individuals we need into our province on our terms." Section 95 of the Constitution Act 1867 relates to federal and provincial legislative jurisdiction over agriculture and immigration. The federal government's provincial nominee program chooses which skilled applicants will be admitted into a given province or territory. Last week, Ottawa told the province that it would receive 9,750 skilled workers. That's the same number we were given in 2023 and down from the 10,140 skilled workers that Ottawa initially promised us for this year. John Carpe, president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, said it was fair of Smith to invoke the Constitution Act because Section 95 requires that the province receives provincial input on immigration. He said, quote, "It's good and relevant to remind the federal government." Carpe also said that while Ottawa is not in conflict with the letter of the law, they do appear to be in conflict with the spirit of the law, which requires the federal government to accommodate the needs of the provinces. And if the province with the strongest and the fastest growing economy requires more skilled workers, he said, quote, "Absent compelling reasons, the federal government should accommodate that." Moving into our watching in the weeks to come, Alberta NDP leadership hopeful Naheed Nenshi's success at signing up new members has caused at least one competitor to drop out. But new data reveals that he has an uphill battle against Alberta Premier Danielle Smith if he wins the leadership contest. Edmonton MLA Raki Pancheli dropped out of the race this week and announced that she would be backing the former Calgary mayor. The Alberta NDP has declined to release updated party numbers, but Pancheli said membership numbers provided to the leadership candidates by the party reveal that Nenshi has more than doubled party membership since he announced his leadership bid 2 weeks ago. The Alberta NDP had 6,224 members at the end of December, and the party says it will release an updated list in May once all new members are vetted. An Abacus data poll released on Wednesday revealed that Nenshi is the most well-known candidate, and he's also the only candidate with a clear net positive impression. However, when it comes to competing with Smith, province-wide support for an Alberta NDP led by Nenshi was at 38%, compared with 53% who said they would vote for Danielle Smith's United Conservative Party. My question of the week for you all is, would you rather vote for an Alberta NDP led by Naheed Nenshi or a United Conservative Party led by Danielle Smith? Drop your answer in the comments below. Nenshi also had a campaign stop in Edmonton this week. Let's take a look at that crowd. If I was a Liberal, this is where I would say that the crowd looks so old and so white, but since I'm not, my only comment is going to be that, man, there are a lot of people wearing masks in that crowd. I really thought we were over the COVID thing by now. I guess some people will just never let it go. And before we move into our weekly comment roundup, Nenshi wasn't the only one to host a political rally in Edmonton this week. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also made a stop in Edmonton for his Axe the Tax rally. Let's take a quick look at that.
7 premiers across Canada, 7 premiers, and 70% of Canadians have called on Trudeau to spike the hike. But they wouldn't have had the courage to do it had there not been a trailblazer leading the way in your common sense Conservative Premier, the great.
Okay, everyone, and finally, moving into our weekly comment roundup. Our first comment here is from a user with a bunch of letters and numbers. I'm not going to read that, but they said, "Recall Gondek is a fine idea, but too many Calgarians are too ignorant of how badly she and Nenshi have harmed Calgary and turned it into an unlikable city with horrific policies that hurt so many citizens. Nenshi and Gondek appear to be of the same mind, and it shows how far Calgary has fallen. I think you're absolutely correct. It seems that most people really just pay attention to federal or even global politics. They also pay a bit of attention to the province, when it's actually decisions being made by your municipal government that tend to affect you most. So it makes a lot of sense to go to those city hall meetings and pay a close mind to what is going on right at home. User Elaine says, none of these politicians are worth a cost. Pay reductions are in order. She is of course correct. And finally, at Glenn Young says, the vandalism only highlighted the Recall Gondek campaign. I got a few friends to sign up who never would have noticed the campaign if it didn't make the news. Gondek is so scared she'll ban all signature collectors from public spaces the city owns. This only illustrates the authoritarian and totalitarianism of Gondek and her supporters. It's very interesting that the vandalism actually helped to raise the public profile of the Recall Gondek campaign, and that it led to some extra signatures. I hadn't heard that before, so thank you for sharing that story. Okay everyone, that's all we have time for today. As always, please like this video and subscribe to True North if you haven't already so you don't miss any of our excellent content. You can also head over to donate.tnc.news to show your support. I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend observing the death and resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm wishing you all a very blessed Easter. I will see you next week, and God bless.